And this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. Tonight's our Army football huddle, and we're going to be talking about Army's game in the state of Texas on Saturday at the University of Texas San Antonio. Army goes into that game 4-2. UTSA is 3-2. I'd like to welcome onto the call tonight Colonel Sam Houston, West Point class of '87, and we have Jack McGuirk calling in from Pelham on our Sons of the American Legion team. And joining us from Florida is Richard Miller, who is also part of our Sons of the American Legion team. How's everybody tonight?
Doing well. How are you?
Good.
Ken.
Good, great. And well, we're going to have we have a 4-1 Army team, one of their best records in 25 years, and they've got a chance. They're going to play a tough opponent on the road. Second time they've played in Texas San Antonio. And it should be a good one. Let's start. Richard Miller, why don't you tell us about the top 25 games from last week?
The top 25 games from last week. Number 1, Clemson remains undefeated with a 42-17 win over Miami. Miami is now 3-1 on the season. The number 2, Alabama Crimson Tide, 63-48 over Ole Miss. Number 3, the Georgia Bulldogs, 3-0 on the season, beating up on Tennessee, who is 2-1, 44-21. Also, Texas A&M in a close game over Florida State. The Florida Gators, number 4. Number 21, Texas A&M, 41-38, the final score in that game. Also in the number 5, Notre Dame, 42-26 over the Florida State Seminoles. Notre Dame goes to 3-0 on the season. Florida State is now 1-3. Number 8, North Carolina, 56-45 over Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's 2-1 on the season. They are currently ranked 19th in the country, while North Carolina goes to 3-0 on the season. Number 13, Auburn gets their second win, a 2-1 record with a 38-28 win over Arkansas. Arkansas has now lost their second game of the season. BYU, number 15, against UTSA. BYU improves to 4-0, a 27-20 win. BYU is now 4-0 on the season. In a quadruple overtime game, Oklahoma and Texas, the Red River rivalry, 53-45. Oklahoma gets the win. Oklahoma is now 2-2 on the season. Texas is at the same record of 2-2. And the last top 25 game of the day, number 24, Iowa State, 3-1, beating Texas Tech, 3-1, who is 1-3 on the season, by a score of 31-15.
Very good, Richard. And boy, that was quite a Red River rivalry game between Oklahoma and Texas. Let's start. And Jack, just give us a quick update on that Navy game last week.
All righty. Well, Navy had a 31-29 win over Temple, one of their rivals there. Nelson Smith led the midshipmen with 151 yards rushing, had 2 touchdowns, a 26-yard run with 3:46 left in the half, and a 22-yard run near the end of the third quarter. Jamali Crothers had a 53-yard rushing, had 53 yards rushing, and came up with the first score of the game, just a 1-yard touchdown carry with 5:22 left in the half. Quarterback Darlin Morris returned. He was actually out during the Air Force Navy game for some health issue. It was not COVID related, but he's back now. And he threw for 48 yards and 2 completions. Sophomore kicker Bijan Nichols had a 50-yard field goal in the game, which is actually their first Navy's first 50-yard field goal in about 10 years. So that was a big field goal for them, giving Navy a 31-23 lead. And on defense, Navy was actually down. Navy's been kind of depleted with injuries and stuff. They're down 5 starters, 4 due to injury for the game, and one of them in the first half because he was ejected from the game, from the Air Force Navy game for targeting. But came in the second half. Sophomore linebacker Terrell Adams made his first career start and led the team with 9 tackles, actually. And in fact, Temple came to within 2 points, scoring a touchdown with 1:02 left in the game to bring the score to 31-29. They tried to tie the score on a 2-point conversion, attempt, but they were stopped by Terrell Adams. And Temple after that picked an onside kick, but it was recovered by Navy, who then ran out the clock and sealed the win. This is actually the 100th career win for head coach Ken Niumatalolo. And Navy is actually 2-2 overall, 2-0 undefeated in AAC. And they have another conference game next weekend against East Carolina on the road there. So yeah, and Air Force. Air Force doesn't have a game until October 24th against San Diego State, first conference game for them. And interesting, we talked about the turnbacks with Air Force. We don't even really know how many players on the team are part of this turnback. It seems between 30 and 40, but the Academy won't divulge the exact number, nor will they name who is getting turned back. So it's kind of anybody's guess there.
Well, maybe what we got to do is look at the lineup for last year against at the end of the season and see how many sophomores and juniors aren't in the 2 deep this year. And that would kind of give us an idea of what they have lost. But we will deal with Air Force in a couple of weeks, and we'll keep an eye on them and maybe later in the season. But Sam Houston, Army, a win on Saturday against Citadel was a whole lot closer than everybody thought it was going to be, 14-9. Army had to do a ball control drive the last 3.5 minutes of the game with their 4th-string quarterback, but they held on, did what they needed to do to get a W. What were your thoughts about the game on Saturday against the Citadel?
First, I'm going to refer back to the Navy game that Jack just gave a great overview on and say that in all of the observations I've done of the Navy football team so far this year, I've come to the conclusion at this point of the season that the only player who is truly legit on Navy so far is that place kicker. That guy's the real deal. And I'm just going to say, forewarning to all the Army fans and the Army team, do not let the Army-Navy game come down to a last field goal attempt by Navy, period. The guy is legit. As
kicker,
for
50-yard kicker, yeah.
He nailed it. If you saw the kick, you realize he would have made it from 60 yards. That's how far he cleared the crossbar, and it was right down the middle. The guy's legit. So he's got ice water in his veins. So, kudos to Navy for finding a guy with a booming leg like that with that kind of accuracy, because what I've seen of him so far this year, he's got a future in the pros. That being said, yeah, you're right. I think everyone was stunned by the Army Citadel game this past Saturday. Clearly was not what I was projecting the final score to be. I was happy that with 5 minutes to go in the game, Citadel still only had 3 points, because I was at least going to say, well, I was right about 1/2 of the score. But then with 5 minutes to go, Army got cute with some play calling, and it cost them dearly. And quite frankly, had the Citadel not missed 2 field goals in this game, with one of them being blocked, Army would have been playing, trying to come from behind to win in the end of the game. And thank goodness the way the offense was playing, that is not the situation that it boiled down to. So more question marks arose from this game than answers. Not so much about the defense, which continues to perform, in my opinion, lights out, but from week to week, the real question mark is which offense is going to show up. Because one week we have an offense that plays dominant, runs up the time of possession, rolls up the rushing yards, and plays extremely well for almost all 4 quarters. And then you have games like Cincinnati and Citadel where they can barely overcome mistakes that they keep making to patchwork together 2 drives that manage to get the scores that they need just to pull out a victory against Citadel. So, yeah, it was a hard-fought victory, but really, I think that the troublesome moment, the troublesome takeaway from the game is that it should not have been a struggle to pull out a victory in that game.
Yeah, there were a number of elements to it. I think one of the things is Army struggled with their fullbacks. Jacoby Buchanan at 31 yards. Cade Bernard had 12 yards, and Anthony Atkins had 9. So, I think it was 50 yards between the fullbacks. Now, Santa McCoy did not play, and we don't know really how much of a difference that makes when he's not in there. But he's the senior captain, certainly the guy who gets the short yardage, gets the goal line, plays, and he was missing. We also saw that Tyrell Robinson was pretty much held in check, and as was the Ortiz Hobbs. Really didn't get any yardage in the game. And so a couple of the running backs were really held in check. Army was held to, I think it was 153 yards rushing in the game, which is less than half of their average. And what did you see that were some of the challenges with the running game? Is it the offensive line is struggling, or is it the defenses are getting a little smarter at playing Army's option offense?
If you watch each series of the game, you're going to see different reasons why the rushing attack just was not effective at all. Sure, part of it has to do with the defense. Clearly, the Citadel was very familiar with the kind of game plan that Army was going to bring to the table. It was almost as though they knew what plays in advance Army was going to call. But start with the very first series. By my count, I think the first 3 attempts of a basic fullback dive, there was problems in the exchange between the quarterback and the B-back. In one case, it was a blatant bump into each other that almost caused a fumble. And whether the hole was there or not, that little delay that was created by the basic exchange and problems that was existing and just handing the ball off, which shouldn't happen, especially at this point of the season, delays the B-back enough to where he has no momentum going into the line of scrimmage, and any crease that was there disappears in a hurry. The second observation that I've made, that I've been making all season, and I made it last season too, and I recently commented on this on one of the Academy forums that I started contributing to. There's been a lot of discussion about Brent Davis, and I don't think this is a situation where we need to be talking about the offensive coordinator or anything like this. But I do have a question mark. I brought it up before the Cincinnati game. And would you ask me back before the Cincinnati game what Army offense needed to do a lot of in their play calling? I said you need to run some traps and you need to run some counter plays. And we saw one counter play in the Cincinnati game. That one counter play busted 11 yards, went to Artis Hobbs. This past Saturday, I didn't see a single counter. I didn't see a single trap play. And Citadel's defense was clearly stacking the line. They were over pursuing. They knew that every play between the tackles was just going to be a straight man-on-man dive play, and all they had to do was stack the hole. And the whole point of running triple option football is through repetition, you catch somebody out of position on the defense. And one of the bread and butter ways that you catch defenses out of position is to suddenly run a counter or a trap play. And that defender who reacts to what he thinks is a simple dive play ends up having a block that knocks him out of the play, opening the hole, or the misdirection from the counter means the person is grasping at straws for the player who does not have the ball. What I don't understand is that Air Force and Navy continue to run the trap and the counter play as part of their bread and butter play calling. And when you watch, like, just say, for instance, the Temple game this past weekend, and by the way, I'm going to add that that was Temple's game to lose Temple lost because they left 13 points on the board, but I'm not discrediting Navy. They got the W. However, if you watch that game, you still saw their B-back busting up the middle for 30, 40 yards and a touchdown untouched. And if you listen to the play analysis and watch the replay, you saw it wasn't a basic dive play. No, it wasn't just a basic quarterback hand the ball off to the B-back up the middle. No, it was a trap. And it was also a fullback counter play that busted the 40-yard runs because the defenses were over pursuing. They were overstacking at the point they thought the ball was going to be handed off, and they got caught with their pants down. So going into the UTSA game, I really do hope and I pray that when the Army offense went into practice this week, that they dusted off their counter plays and their trap plays to both the halfback and the B-back, and they're prepared to strategically place that play calling against UTSA to keep their defense honest. Because when you're playing defense against a triple option, if your defense is being honest, it means that the play calling on the offensive side of the ball is unpredictable. Citadel knew what we were doing. They knew what we were doing every play, and they made it a hard fight.
Well, that was one of the things they knew going in, is that the coaches had a seminar together in the spring where they, both Citadel and Army play a very similar brand of option offense, and they did a seminar together, maybe on Zoom, to go over how to attack certain defenses, not knowing that they would possibly play each other in the fall. So there certainly wasn't any surprise. Sam, just for our listeners who may not familiar exactly, and what is a trap play and what is a counter play in your mind?
All right. Just to keep it real basic, a trap play. So on a straight dive play, a lineman is going to block down normally on the defensive lineman that's right in front of him, or to one side or the other. That's it. You're expected to man on man, block your man, open a hole, and that's the way the play is designed. On a trap play, however, a lineman will release, and so what will happen is a defender suddenly thinks they have a clear path to the ball carrier, when instead another lineman has pulled and will basically take the lineman or whoever the person being blocked by surprise in a what we call we lured the defender into a trap, and that trap creates a large gash hole where the defense thought they had the hole covered because they didn't see the blocker coming. Normally it involves a pulling lineman. So if a guard blocks down on a defender in front of him, and another lineman blocks down, they intentionally leave another defensive lineman unblocked, so that someone from further down the line of scrimmage who has pulled will run the line of the scrimmage and catch that defender off guard, creating an easy block situation in the hole. Now, a counter play is a misdirection play. The counter play will normally set up as though the quarterback is doing a straight dive play. However, the counter can be run in basically two different methods. One would be for the quarterback to hold the ball after a fake handoff and counter in an opposite direction. And basically takes advantage of the defensive over pursue against the B-back who the fake handoff has gone to. Or one of the halfbacks can do a misdirection where there's maybe a stutter step involved and turns back, takes the handoff after the fake in the opposite direction, once again catching the defense out of position because they over pursued on the fake. And the only counter that I have seen Army run, with the exception of one time this entire season, is an occasional what we call a quarterback counter. And that play was not at any time in the Citadel game. It wasn't very well set up or blocked, nor was the fake very well conducted because of the challenges that the quarterback, Jamel Jones, and the B-back were having in handoffs on occasion. There was another play where the actual quarterback draw should have actually been a moment where the quarterback handed the ball off, and that was down near the goal line. They handed off to Buchanan, or faked to Buchanan. He went untouched through the line of scrimmage, and Jamel did a quarterback counter follow, which was following the B-back, and he got tackled for maybe a minimal 2-yard gain while Buchanan wasn't even touched. So obviously, in some cases, a counter is either a design play where there's automatically going to be a fake and a handoff after misdirection, or it's going to be a quarterback read. Normally, when there's a quarterback follow counter that's run, it's a quarterback read. So instead of it's basically a single option quarterback read type of play at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. Well, Sam, I appreciate that. One of the factors, that was Jamel Jones' first official start for Army, filling in for Christian Anderson, who was injured in the Abilene Christian game. And we will see who is going to go out on the field. Coach Munkin on Tuesday in the media conference said that Christian Anderson was practicing this week, and said, and the indications I've gotten from West Point is that Jamel Jones is going to be able to play this week. How much of, and I guess some of the comments that I heard from alumni and fans were that they thought the offense was kind of limited. How much of that is Jamel Jones just trying to keep the offense simplified for, is basically his second game where he's had a fair amount of playing time?
I don't think that simplification of the game plan was necessary for Jamel Jones. Just the week before, he had played magnificent, and Army had not been limiting the play calling while he was in the game. And so his familiarity with the repertoire that's in the Army offensive huddle is pretty why the need for keeping the play calling so basic during the Citadel game was beyond me. I don't really have the PhD to be able to write a dissertation on why that was. But in my opinion, it really did keep it easy for the Citadel defense because of the fact that Army was limiting themselves on running plays to basically 3 or 4 different calls with occasional passes. Now, granted, they did catch the Citadel out of coverage on one play, and Jamel Jones overthrew the receiver in the end zone. That should have been a touchdown. There was a drop, and then there was, a couple of one of the interceptions that the Citadel achieved towards the end of the first half. I mean, that was just an incredible effort on the part of the Citadel defender to be able to catch the ball and keep it from hitting the ground. The other pass was just, actually, there were, with 5 minutes to go in the game, there were 2 passes that were extremely ill-advised. One of them was the play on first down where Jamel Jones failed to throw the ball beyond the line of scrimmage, resulting in a intentional grounding call and an extreme long yardage. And then on third down, the fullback screen call, the fullback was there, but he just didn't throw the ball. So,
How much of that do you think, Sam, was just really inexperience on the part of Jamel Jones, something he'll learn from? Hopefully not do again. It did seem like they put him in a spot throwing on first down rather than trying to, play Army football, which is try to get 4, 5, 6 yards on first down and then make it an easy first down to get thereafter. Did see there was a lot of critique about that set of play calling and what they asked Jamel Jones to do in that sequence.
Yeah, I'm going to use this opportunity to say that when a play fails that's been called, it can never be pinned on just one player. To Jamel's credit, he had defenders in his face constantly. There was always a Citadel defender coming at him unblocked. So somewhere there was a serious breakdown on the part of either the lineman or the backs out of the backfield to properly apply their assigned blocking. You can't have effective passing games when you always have someone coming at you unblocked. And, part of it I would attribute to experience. Certainly Jamel Jones, he's a yearling. This was his first start. He's been thrown into game situations before this year and last year. He's done reasonably well, and for the most part, and sometimes outstanding. But eventually, and I know how it feels when you get put in a situation where you got a defender in your face all the time. Sometimes it causes you to make mistakes, and that happened to him on Saturday.
Let's talk a little bit about the defense. The defense really played well. Citadel had just 218 yards of total offense, 4 of 9 passing, and 148 yards rushing. Eric Smith, the linebacker, really had a big game with 11 tackles, 2 sacks on the day, 3 tackles for loss. And in fact, he had the back-to-back sacks late in the game, which really ended a Citadel opportunity on offense. And then John Radican, 8 tackles. Amadeo West had a strong game, 7 tackles. And Lowry, linebacker, had 7. And then the 2 safeties, Broughton and Cunningham, both had 6 tackles. Jabari Moore, 6. Defense is looking good. And it's good to see Amadeo West have that much impact on the game. It shows that he's healthy, and it makes the inside linebacker core and the pair of safeties really a great combination right now for Army. What do you think about the defense, Sam, at this point?
The defense is so much better than it was a year ago, and there's been incredible improvement on the part of the defense performance in all the games so far. Every week, the defense has been a huge part of either the victory or keeping the game in a manageable situation where it could have been won. And in that case, I'm talking about Cincinnati. They've clearly bought into the scheme of Nate Woody. He's injected them with an enthusiasm on the field. They are gang tackling like lights out. Their speed and pursuit to the ball and the velocity with which they're hitting has been impressive throughout. And with a young defensive secondary, we lost several people last year who were very experienced defensive secondary. And so that was a question mark that I thought coming into this season. But the secondary has also been playing very well. Let's hope that it continues. And I see no reason why it would not. But, there are still moments where you've got to be concerned that there needs to be some improvement. In the Citadel game, for example, when they changed quarterbacks, suddenly the new quarterback became a dual threat, both throwing and running the ball, and ended up being the leading rusher for the Citadel. And the only change that was made on Citadel's part was they just changed quarterbacks. So in that case, the defense needs to be able to make adjustments. And I'm not saying they didn't, but they need to make adjustments faster, because when you come up against a team like UTSA or Air Force, for example, which is right around the corner here, you're going to be placed in a situation where the athletes you're facing are better, And in the case of UTSA, they have several quarterbacks that they use. And an adjustment on offense from one quarterback to another should not be that big of a disruption in the defense, so long as you're also making rapid adjustments to meet the new threat that's being represented. But my comments are certainly not meant to be critical at all. The defense is such a breath of fresh air for Army. They lead in so many statistical, they're in the top 10 in so many statistical categories this year in FBS football. I hope it stays that way, because defense wins championships. And what that means is defense wins Commander-in-Chief trophies.
That's right. That's the big prize this year is Commander-in-Chief trophy, bring it back to Army, bring it back from Navy, where it was won last year. 1 point on defense is Kwabena Bonzu is away from playing because of an administrative reason at the academy, according to Coach Munkin on Tuesday. And playing that end position is number 91, Ryan Duran, junior from Gibsonia, Pennsylvania. He was part of the field goal block last week. And Coach Munkin seemed very pleased with his play, as well as the play of the nose guard, Nolan Cockrell, who is got 5 Ranger jerseys. He's got a Ranger jersey awarded for superior performance in all 5 of the games so far. So defensive line with Amadeo West playing the other end position really looks pretty strong right now.
Indeed, they do. Very quick, very aggressive. They're very good at the different types of stunts and schemes that are being implemented at the line of scrimmage. My only real concern that I carry around in the back of my mind when I watch Army play is their size. You know, they're not the biggest defensive line that you'll find in FBS football, and there will be games where they do come up against very talented offensive linemen who greatly exceed them in size. And I suspect that UTSA coming up, that they've got a big offensive line. So they're going to have to out-hustle and move in manner that allows them to stay one step ahead and not allow the size factor that's involved with the offensive linemen they're facing. I think they're up for the challenge. I think the Cincinnati game proved that. They definitely were facing a very powerful offensive line against Cincinnati, and they held Cincinnati to only about 60 yards rushing. So, but yeah, kudos to the entire defense. Such, again, a breath of fresh air over what happened last year. It was around this time last year, after the Michigan game was over, that it appeared the wind had just dropped out of the sails completely on both sides of the ball. And the defense was increasingly struggling to keep even mediocre teams out of the end zone. That's not happening this year, and it's really a great thing to see.
Yeah, and you know, looking at Army's defensive line, Ryan Duran is 6'5", 270. Nolan Cockrell, 6'3", 280, which is pretty good size for a nose guard. But Amadeo West, who's basically a linebacker, 6'2", 245, is not big at defensive end, but Coach Munkin likes the way he plays, and so that's where they're running at. Let's go take a little before we get back to the UTSA game. Let's have Jack McGuirk tell us a little bit about the Navy game this week, and then Richard Miller can tell us about the top 25 games coming up.
Well, coming up this weekend, Navy actually is taking on another AAC opponent. That's going to be East Carolina. Now, they just had a win over Temple, Navy did. So we'll see how they do against Eastern Carolina. Should be a good one, and that's going to be on the road. That's a road game for Navy. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah. Richard Miller, do we have you there?
Yes, you are. Yes, here, Ken. The top 25 games coming up. The top 25 games coming up this weekend. On the schedule, a couple of games on the schedule. Number one, Clemson will be facing Georgia Tech at the 12 o'clock Eastern game on the ABC. Number 13, Miami is taking on Pittsburgh, 12 o'clock. Number 15, Auburn is taking on South Carolina, also a 12 o'clock game. Number 18, Tennessee is taking on Kentucky. Also, number Alabama, number 3, taking on Georgia, number 2, 8 o'clock on CBS. Huge game there. 23, Virginia Tech is taking on Boston College at 8 p.m. Number 4, Notre Dame is taking on Louisville at 2:30.
Very good, Richard. Thank you. And, Sam, I think of the University of South Carolina with General Bob Coslin, who's the president there now. It's been a difficult year for every college in the country and it put a big responsibility on every college president. But I certainly think he came in with a lot of experience to that position as president of the University of South Carolina. And I'm sure he's an inspiration to the football team down there. What do you think of that? How's General Coslin doing down in South Carolina?
I think he's doing an outstanding job. Bob Coslin, General Coslin, sir to me, he's a warrior. And I'll tell you, he's the kind of guy that warfighters we would follow to the gates of hell to storm Satan's palace if we had to. And he has infectious enthusiasm. He's got a can-do attitude. He accepts nothing but winning, and he makes sure that he puts the right people in place around him to create a winning attitude and a winning team. And so hats off to General Coslin. He just is going to go down in the annals of West Point as one of the greatest superintendents that the Academy ever had. And rightfully so. So South Carolina, you've got a good one there, and take care of him because he's going to take care of you for a long time.
Yeah. We saw a lot of his comments on Twitter. I believe his book just came out. I saw it online. I have to go get a copy, always enjoyed chatting the opportunities with General Coslin, and he really left West Point in good shape and taking on a new challenge. Now, Sam, we talked a little bit about UTSA. They gave Brigham Young a pretty good battle last week. They've got a new coach, Jay Traylor, who came in this year, and a very good. And Coach Munkin was complimenting their defensive coordinator, Tyrone Nix, as he called him a legend in the field in what he's able to do. They've got a big offensive line. Their center is 6'3", 320, and the left guard is 6'3", 300. They've got some big people. They know how to throw the ball. It's a pretty much balanced offense, throwing the ball, running the ball. They had some trouble. Their nemesis has been pass defense. They were giving up almost 300 yards a game on pass defense, but as Coach Munkin said, that's not going to be a big deal on Saturday. It's all about stopping the run. And they know it about when they face Army. What's your thought on the UTSA team?
They are vastly improved over last year. As everyone knows, last year Army traveled down to San Antonio. I went to the game myself to play UTSA, and I think the final was 31-13. Probably could have been a bigger margin of victory than that. Army did commit a couple of turnovers that cost them on a couple of drives. But they did have not a goal line stand, but definitely a 4-down stand inside the red zone late in the game. They kept UTSA from getting back in the game. I do expect there to be a chip on the shoulder of UTSA. They not only want revenge for last year, they know that they're playing at a level that is greatly above where they were a year ago. And I know that they look at this game as a winnable game. So they have confidence coming in, especially after the way they played BYU this past Saturday. And I did not have an opportunity to watch the BYU game. I had meant to, I just didn't have the opportunity. But from what I've heard, BYU had some opportunities that they failed to convert on. But UTSA kept the game close. And it was a manageable, even winnable game for them down to the wire. And so a game against a team that has absolutely blown out every single team that they have faced up to this point this season lets the players know with a pat of confidence that you've got a good team and you can hang with the best of them. So the trap for UTSA is to look at Army and say, well, they're not as good as BYU, and that can create a trap game situation for them. But I don't think their new head coach is going to allow that to happen. So Army is going to have their hands full. I know what the line says. I think it's like 7 for Army, but I got to say, I think the game is a lot closer than that. And if Army is not capable of correcting the deficiencies that they have shown on offense, that both this past weekend at Citadel or against Citadel and in the game that they played against Cincinnati, it's going to be a tough row to hoe for the Army team, because they cannot afford to go into this game expecting the defense to carry them into the fourth quarter. They've got to put points on the board. And by that, I mean, if UTSA scores a touchdown, Army needs to answer with a touchdown. And that's probably the nature of the game from start to finish. One caveat that I'll add is, I don't know if it's still burning in anybody. It is kind of with me, but last year at the conclusion of the Army-Navy game, the Army-UTSA game, Army came to the sideline and we struck up the alma mater. And at that precise moment, the UTSA band, whether intentional or by mistake, struck up whatever they were playing and drowned out the Army alma mater. And it really created a lot of bad blood for the alum that were on the sideline and in the stands when that happened. So I hope UTSA's band director learned his lesson last year, how sacred the Army alma mater is, and that when we gather as a team on the sideline with the alumni and the cadets to sing that alma mater, that there's only one course of action you can take, and that is to stand silently in respect while we sing the alma mater.
Yeah, I noted, the Citadel players stood in a line right behind Army at Mikey Stadium last week. And I do notice that sometimes they don't have it fully coordinated, surprisingly, because the bands all have their set routine and what they do for their post game. And sometimes it just hasn't been properly coordinated. I think that was what may have happened last year. They just didn't understand Army's tradition. But in any case, you got a score for us, Sam?
This is a tough one. So I'm going to give you 2 scores, because I'm going to approach this from 2 different scenarios. Scenario 1, Army offense finds themselves, doesn't beat themselves, and executes flawlessly as we expect them to. Reminiscent of 2017, 2018, when they minimized penalties, never turned the ball over, executed on every play. If that's the case, then Army wins this game, and they'll win it by a score of 35-21. However, if the Army offense that we saw against the Citadel, or the Army offense that couldn't find themselves against Cincinnati, is what we encounter in the Alamo Dome on Saturday, it's going to make for a very disappointing result for all Army faithful. If that's the case, the final score is going to be UTSA 21, Army 13.
Well, I should have asked you the question. Do you have if both Christian Anderson and Jamel Jones are healthy at this point, which quarterback do you think Coach Monken will select?
Well, he'll go with Christian Anderson because that's who his starter is. That's who started the season, and that's who Monken puts his faith in. So Monken has never been a guy, with rare exception, to where when it comes game time, that what he shows on the depth chart, that's not who he plays. The rare exception I can think of is when he chose Jabari Laws over Kelvin Hopkins last year. But we now know that that was actually because Kelvin Hopkins was hurt and he was not himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if both quarterbacks are healthy and ready to go on Saturday, he's not going to hesitate. Christian Anderson's a starter.
Yeah, and it is noticeable on the 2D chart that Army Athletics sent out that Jabari Laws is not on the chart as quarterback. Maurice Bellin, the sophomore, is listed as the number 3 quarterback behind Christian Anderson and Jamil Jones. Jack, what's your thought on the game? What do you think score is going to be between Army and UTSA?
I think it's going to be a close one. You know, I was looking at UTSA's schedule, and of course, you mentioned the BYU game was close. BYU, of course, started the season with that big blowout win over Navy. But also on their schedule, they had a close game against Middle Tennessee. It was a 27-25 win over Middle Tennessee. Of course, Middle Tennessee, first game of the season for them was a blowout loss at Mikey Stadium against Army. So that was an interesting point in the schedule. I think it could be maybe a 28-21 win for Army. Another factor, the second road game for Army in the season, that could play a factor. If this game was at Mikey Stadium, it would be, I think I would give Army a huge advantage. I actually saw an interesting stat. Dating back to 2017, Army has a record at Mikey Stadium of 20-2, which is pretty impressive. Yeah. And the defense, they continue to play well. That should help Army. They actually have 10 takeaways on the season so far, 6 interceptions and 4 fumble recoveries. But I'm going to go with 28-21 Army for the win.
Okay, very good. And good analysis there, Jack. Who do you like between Navy and, you said it's Eastern Carolina?
Yeah. Well, Navy, it's interesting. They've kind of struggled. We're trying to figure out, who is this team? Because they, had that loss against Air Force, which surprised everybody. And then they bounced back with win over Temple, and they had that surprise huge comeback win against Tulane. So I think this one, it looks like maybe they're starting to get on the right track. So I think Navy might pull out a win, Carolina. But these are 2 fairly evenly matched teams, so I think it could be a close one.
Okay, good analysis of that game. Richard Miller, do we have you calling in from Florida?
Yes, I'm here. I'm going to go 28-21. I think this is going to be a close game. Army is going to have to play really tightly. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, a close game by a touchdown. 28-21 Army.
Okay, very good. I think this is also going to be a close game. I think Army's going to put points on the board. It's a question about who plays quarterback. It's a question about if Santa McCoy is available as a fullback. But I think they will really try to get their fullbacks in gear and have a big day. I do think UTSA is a good passing team. As Coach Monken said in our talk we had yesterday, they have to keep the game in front of them. The Army secondary does. They have to avoid big pass plays by UTSA, and that's going to be the challenge for them. But the safeties seem to be playing better every week. Markel Broughton and Cedric Cunningham, and the linebacker core, Eric Smith, is really starting to learn how to put pressure on the quarterback. And so I think Army is going to prevail, but I think it's going to be a close game, something like 24-17. So we will look forward to that. And I want to thank everybody. I also want to thank our sponsors. Number one, the Westchester Bank, John Tolomer, branches throughout Westchester County, big supporter of what we try to do, telling the story of West Point. And if you have a question, if you're a veteran, call up and ask to speak to the CEO, and John Tolomer will take care of you. And also, I thank the White Plains Bake Shop, Lee Kaufman's great supporter of us. And Also, Patty Devine is our computer technical expert. It's given us some great help in building our audience on Facebook. And as always want to thank the 2 million veterans of the American Legion who we represent in this effort, and the 350,000 members of our organization, the Sons of the American Legion, who are serving America's veterans. So I thank our team today, Jack McGuirk calling in from Pelham, and we'll be back on WVOX on Monday at 2:30, our weekly show, and Sam Houston calling in from Huntsville, Alabama, from the Beat Navy studio. Beat Navy, graduate of the United States Military Academy, class of '87, and Richard Miller, our producer director, calling in today from Florida. So have a good night, everybody. We'll watch the game, 1:30 start. It's on the CBS Sports Network, and it's going to be played at the Alamo Dome. It's going to be a good game on Saturday. So on behalf of everybody at Sons of the American Legion Radio, have a great night.